Hey, everybody. Thanks so
Hello.
much for joining us. If we haven't met, I'm Christy Price. I'm a Squarespace expert and educator, and I am joined today by Sophie Dale, who is a relational marketing mentor. And I'm so excited to have Sophie here today. She's going to be talking to us about marketing made easy. So, what if marketing could feel like hanging out with your friends? Sophie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So, I know you talk a lot about how it's different than following mainstream online business advice, how something different than that can work for people. So I'm really excited to have you share with us today what that looks like for you.
Sure. I think actually, in a way, everything I'm saying is what was true about marketing until about 20 years ago, or maybe even, 10, 15 years ago. And it seems like it's non-mainstream now, but that's because it was very, very, very mainstream until social media and iPhones and all the technological changes that, neither of us would have our businesses without now. Because really, when it comes down to it, people have been trading with other people for hundreds of thousands of years. We have known how to do this stuff as a civilization for such a long time. And I feel like there's been so much advice, such an outpouring of advice about how to use social media in particular, but how to market in a virtual world, that we've almost forgotten what's actually more natural and easier. So
Mhm,
I guess that's the nub of it, really. It's going back to the basics.
mhm. So, what are those basics?
So I think really the basics are just talking to people
Mhm,
and building relationships, staying in touch with people. So I think one thing that we all tend to do as business owners is kind of fixate on where the next client is coming from, or the next
mhm,
student, or the next customer. And actually, within our existing audience and the people who've already bought from us, are people who would buy from us again, and people who know
yeah,
other people who would like to buy from us. And I think going back to thinking about how to stay in touch with the people that we've worked with already, how to get back in touch with former colleagues, people that you met once at a conference 5 years ago and they were really
mhm,
interesting, but you didn't quite follow up at the time, all of those kinds of people, and thinking about who would you like to be connected with and how could you make that happen. It's
mhm,
really all of those kinds of things. So it's a combination of reaching out to people regularly, staying in touch with people, maybe organizing events of various different kinds for yourself in order to bring people together and in order to have something to invite people to.
mhm,
And then reaching out to be, a guest on somebody's podcast, or that kind of thing, so that
mhm,
you can get to know not just their audience, but the person themselves, and then staying
mhm,
in touch with that person afterwards as well, which
mhm.
is a thing that I think a lot of us tend not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. We have hello. Thanks so much for joining
Okay.
us. LMXC1RC. I love the names. Like I'm never quite sure what it is. Well, I wanted to chat with you today about like I don't know if there's anything particular that you have that you want to share. If you do, feel free. Otherwise, I'm happy to just ask questions and learn more about
Yeah, I guess we had our slight technological hiccup before this began, so we didn't have our
yes.
chat about how is this going to go. I was thinking of this in terms of us just having a chat,
Great.
but if that works for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that you touched on was staying in touch with people or reconnecting with people that you've met at conferences or networking events. And I'm curious, how do you do that without it feeling salesy? Because very often I'll be at a conference and I'll meet someone and we'll have like a nice interaction. And then they'll message me on LinkedIn and I'll think, oh, great, I have a connection. And then immediately they're trying to sell me something. And I just feel so disheartened. I was like, "Oh, I thought you were a human, but now you're a sales bot." So how can we sell from a place of helpfulness and connection without being that guy?
I mean, I think it boils down to not being that guy. So not hitting somebody over the head with a sales pitch, um, when they think that you're sending them a nice, friendly connection request.
Mhm,
I really do see it as a process of just building relationships, and then out of those relationships, ideas will emerge over time. I don't tend to do a lot of heavy duty follow up with somebody who I am purely thinking of as a potential client, because that
mhm.
would feel salesy. It would feel like I was
Right.
chasing them for the
It
sale.
feels
So if
inauthentic,
I
right?
meet
Yeah.
somebody who yeah, exactly. Because if that's truly my goal, then I should just either be upfront and say that, or ask them if they want to join my email list or something like that, so that they're in that bucket of people who are um,
Mhm,
have given their full permission to be marketed to.
mhm,
But what I'm thinking about is not normally somebody who I'm primarily expecting or hoping would one day become a client. It's more
mhm.
people whom I might in some way collaborate with. And so, in that sense, I think it's much easier to be upfront about getting back in touch with that person and then saying, I had this idea for a workshop that we could maybe do together based on the conversation we
Yeah.
had, or I wonder if you'd like to come on my podcast, or that kind of thing. So you are being
Mhm.
upfront about what you want, but what you want is not to sell them something.
Yeah.
So I think it's, yeah, as you say, it's just being authentic, really, and being honest,
Mhm,
being transparent about why it is you're getting in touch with somebody.
mhm.
Which sometimes might be that they, have a really cute dog and you like their photos of their dog and that's what you're commenting on. That's fine too. But
Yes.
just being upfront, I think, is a
Mhm.
huge part of it.
Okay. Yeah, I really I feel that is so important because there are so many times that you think something starts out as authentic and then very quickly you see it devolve into what it actually was, and it's
Yes.
hurtful in a way. So
Mm,
I love that you're
yeah, it
coming
really
from a
is.
place of transparency. Bailey Works 53 has a question. Do you see reverting to past marketing methods like calling people is making a comeback rather than social media or even emails? That's an interesting question.
It is, isn't it? I'm not so sure about calling people. I think there's, whole generations who would die rather than pick up the phone. um,
I
but
know my husband and I have a joke that our daughter, and we're like, she doesn't like it when we call. We have to
oh,
text. She doesn't like it
yes,
when we call.
yeah. So that I think is less likely, but I do think that in-person events are really going to have a big resurgence,
Mhm.
especially the more AI takes over, the more I think people will want that, being in a room with other physical, fleshy human beings, because of that sense of connection that you can't get in the same way virtually.
I'm definitely feeling that. I I think typically I go to 1 or 2 in-person events a year, maybe 3, and this year I've already been to 4, and it's
Yeah.
only the beginning of April because I am craving that connection because I do feel like so much of the content that is pushed to me is robot content,
Yeah.
and I'm tired of it. I just want people, and
Mhm.
um, it's a very big shift for me this year, and honestly, it's expensive. It's expensive to attend summits or conferences, to travel, but for me, I feel like it's what's keeping me sane this year.
Mhm. I mean, I've heard the same thing from so many other people.
Mhm,
And I think so many people that I know are looking at how can they reconfigure their businesses so
mhm,
that maybe they run more in the way of in-person retreats, or
mhm,
how can they make their services higher touch? How can they have that much more personal feel to it? I know that I mean, even just little things like my mentorships now, I use a platform called Clarity Flow that is a little bit like
Mhm,
something like Voxer, but it
mhm,
also, you can do video messages and various other things on it too. And I think that kind of back and forth of sending a quick voice message and then
mhm,
getting the other person's voice note, and then that feels somehow more human than scheduling calls in advance. It feels more in the
mhm,
flow of our day-to-day lives. And I do think people are craving not just that in-person connection, but that kind of
mhm,
the back and forth, the more
mhm.
conversational way of doing things, more as if, you live in the same village as somebody and you're going to keep bumping into them, that kind of feel to it, for sure.
Yeah. I like that because I feel like so many of us feel like we're spending so much time creating content and pushing it out into the world, and it's just crickets on the other end.
Yeah.
So, you post a video, you send an email, and you probably won't get any real responses, or maybe one out of the
Yeah.
thousands of people that you're sending
Yeah.
it out to. And it feels really isolating, I think. And
Mm.
I think that was the case even before, AI became such a big part of our day to day. And I feel like with AI now on top of that, and so much of the content is robot generated, that we really are craving that back and forth with another person. And I think that Clarity Flow sounds like a really good solution for that. I think I use that in a membership that I'm in. And it's really nice because you could do like videos and text and respond in different ways. So that's really
Yeah.
handy. And I love
Yeah.
Voxer as well. That's
Mhm.
something that
Yeah.
I do because I think for me, we're all so very busy these days that it's hard to like find a time to talk with someone for a 15-minute conversation, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I just have a question, or hey, I just want to touch base. And that's where, a voice message in WhatsApp or Voxer or Clarity Flow, it's asynchronous and it feels so nice because it does still feel like you get that connection, but it doesn't have to be instantaneous.
Yes. Yes. And I think we need to switch off from that kind of urgency that,
Hmm.
we feel so much of the time. I think as well, I was just thinking about, the communities that you're running now, the YouTube
Hmm.
community and the, community for web designers. I
Hmm.
think that's another way in which this is manifesting itself. People want to come together. They want to have that opportunity to talk to other people who are going through the same thing or trying to do the same thing.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I feel those communities, I think both of mine are on school, and I think that school has come at the perfect time because we
mm,
all are craving small cohorts of people who are doing the
yeah,
same thing that we can get to know. So, yeah, so I have two groups that you mentioned. One is a YouTube growth lab for people who are trying to start or grow a YouTube channel, based on the experience that I had starting my YouTube channel about Squarespace. And then I'm doing an experiment starting another YouTube channel. And it's so interesting because I'd forgotten how hard it is. And just doing that
mm,
alongside other people who are like, yeah, you said this was a 30-minute task, but it took me all day. And I'm like, you know what? It is a 30-minute
yeah,
task once you've been doing
it
this for
does.
2 years. Yeah, my
Yeah,
bad. So,
yeah.
and I'm living through that again with the new channel. So I think it's really amazing to be in community with people who are all experimenting and you're learning from each other as well. And similarly for Web Design Roundtable, which is my community for web designers, because our jobs are changing so much right now, and what we're taking in from clients, so much AI generated information that we're getting, feedback that we're getting, and but still the same struggles that we've had for the last 10 years working as web designers. Like, should I offer maintenance plans? Or, a client disappeared. What do I do? So that
Yeah.
kind of having a community of people to talk through that with is so key because at least for me, when I started my web design business, I was basically moving from WordPress to Squarespace. And in the WordPress world, back when I was doing WordPress web design 10 years ago, it was very much a closed system in terms of people did not talk to one another. If you had a question, you had to figure it out on your own. There was no transparency, no openness. I remember I met another WordPress web designer. We were both working on a nonprofit project together. And he'd been doing it for longer than I had at the time. He was local and we met. And I was asking him, I'm like, yeah, I saw you did this on the website. That was really cool. How did you do that? And he was like, oh, that's proprietary information. I was like, okay. And that's what the community felt like. And
Mm.
when I moved to Squarespace, it was a very different feel. And I think that, being a part of people who wanted to share what was working for them and share how they were doing things, even if it's a paid course, you're at least giving people an opportunity to learn how you're
Yeah.
doing things. It was just so different. And I was so thrilled to be part of that. But even so, as a solopreneur, it can feel isolating unless you're in a community that, has a place where you can go and drop a note, you know, a couple times a week or go to a live call once a month with people who are experiencing the same thing. So, yeah, I feel the same that those kinds of communities are really like this is going to be their heyday.
I think so. And I think something that I work on with my mentorship clients and also in the Expand Your Business Ecosystem course
Mhm,
is that I see it as there being two kinds of collaboration out there. And one
mhm.
of the kinds is kind of public facing. So what we're doing now is a public facing collaboration in the sense that,
Yes.
anybody can tune in and watch it.
Mhm.
But what we might do a different day is meet up for a virtual coffee and just
Sure.
chat about the behind the scenes of our businesses and
Which we
so
have
on and so
done.
forth, which we
Yeah.
have done,
Mhm,
doubtless will do again. And it's those private, I call them inner circle collaborations, that I think people underestimate the value of that. They think that they should be chasing people who have got the idea that they should be doing this more relational form of marketing
mhm,
tend to be very focused on, outreach to podcast hosts and that kind of thing. And that is
mhm,
really important and it's good stuff to do. But I also think um, you can't forget the value of things like setting up a peer mastermind group or running a private co-working circle or
mhm,
having an accountability buddy because it's tough to do something and you know that you need to get it done. All
mhm,
of those kinds of things. When I think about what's actually made the most difference in my business,
mhm,
it's often been opportunities that have come about because of those deepened connections with other business owners, because we do the things like being in the peer mastermind groups or having the regular virtual coffee or whatever.
mhm,
And I think in the Expand Your Business Ecosystem course, we spend as much time looking at the options for those kinds of collaborations and those kind of more private, supportive, reciprocal, the ways in which you can feel like you are part of a community, not just paid communities, but a community that you have handpicked in terms of people
Yes.
who you think, just like, I like that person. They seem interesting. They always have an interesting perspective. They're very supportive. They're anybody who you meet who gives you that kind of sense of this is a person I would like to be friends with one way or another. Um, I think that's really precious. And that reaching out and starting to build those kinds of relationships so that it's not somebody who you once fleetingly met and they seemed really nice, but it's somebody who you speak to once a month.
Yeah.
Um, I think that all kinds of doors have opened in my business because of those kinds of relationships where that person
Mhm,
has, for instance, been on a podcast that I would be a great fit for, and then they've mentioned
mhm,
me to the host and that kind of
mhm,
thing. So I think sometimes it's a little bit more convoluted how you get to those opportunities, but that
mhm,
that general just kind of going back to basics, being friends with people, being helpful to
mhm,
people when you can, um, trying to make sure that you hold the door open for other people and suggest opportunities and
mhm,
suggest that two disparate people whom in different contexts might actually really be able to help one another on a particular project or all of those kinds of things. I think the thing that I talk about a lot is creating a kind of network or web of mutual support for yourself and your business, where
Mhm.
you make sure that you're putting in at least as much as you're taking out, and that it doesn't have to be transactional. You don't have to feel like, well, I've given X to this person, so they should give me back X. But just,
Mhm.
you've put X into the system more generally, and
Yeah.
you can relax in the expectation that somehow what you've put in will come back to you, not necessarily from the exact same people. I just think that is how human society has worked. Like, we evolved
Yeah.
to be in small tribes where people had to behave reasonably well to one another, or they would get banished and then they would
Mhm.
starve. Um, that's that behavior is it's really deep in us. I think we do know how to do this stuff.
Mhm.
And I I guess what I feel like I've tried to do in my business is kind of build my own village,
Mhm.
so that I've got that support, and it's been invaluable.
I agree. I agree. I One thing that you said really resonated with me, and that was like just being helpful. And
Mm.
that's how I built my entire business, was by being helpful.
Yes.
So when I moved to Squarespace in 2018, I started blogging, and I would go into communities and see what questions people had. And then I would write a blog post about it and share it. And that's how I got clients. That's how I built my business. And just taking that a step further and being helpful to people one on one in your circle is so important. And, offering those connections. Um, you mentioned your expand your business ecosystem, and I was a part of that last year. And I know you're starting a new cohort very soon. I dropped a link in the comments. Well, I dropped a link for my communities and also for Sophie's Expand Your Business Ecosystem if you want to take a look at that. But Sophie, I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about how that group program works, because I thought it was really lovely and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And not only was it helpful, but it was just like really delightful to be a part of. So I would love if you could share a little bit of that with us.
Thank you. I guess what I thought when I was originally setting it up was,
Mhm.
what I have got the most out of in terms of the courses I've done in the past has usually been the community, the cohort,
Mhm.
the connections,
Mhm.
and obviously the information that I've learned has been useful to me. But when I think about what the real ROI of being part of most of the courses I've ever been part of has been, it's
Mhm.
been the connections that I've made and the people that I've become friends with and the collaborations that have happened as a result, and so on. And so when I was setting up this course, which is about collaborations, I thought, actually, I really don't want it to be very information heavy. I don't want it to be kind of like, come to this lesson, come to that lesson, etc. I just want us to actually start kind of mirroring within the
Mhm.
group the activities that would grow all of our businesses as if we were to do them outside of the group.
Mhm.
And so I've tried to make it as kind of participatory as possible, and to give people as many opportunities as possible to get to know one another further.
Mhm.
And there's been so much kind of wisdom in the room, which is why I brought some of you, as is the case with you, back as guest teachers for this round,
Mhm.
because people, almost everybody has some real expertise in some area of
Mhm.
the relationship building marketing, but some people know a lot about podcasting but less about creating inner circle collaborations or whatever. So
Mhm.
the point of the bringing the course together is to bring together all of those different options, and having what people kept referring to as the big list of 30
Yeah.
odd different kinds of collaboration, so that just to kind of spark ideas for people.
Mhm.
But I think the thing that I have liked most about that course is how many of the people in the course have gone on to set up all these different little collaborations afterwards. So lots of people, one of my clients messaged me yesterday and told me that she was messaging me from a virtual co-working session she was in with other people from the group.
I love
Um,
it.
Yes. And people have been on one another's podcasts, and people have been, there are a couple of people who are planning joint workshops together, and, just actually putting into action the ideas
Mhm,
behind the course rather than watching a whole pile of videos, filling out
mhm,
a workbook, and then never doing any of that stuff again.
mhm,
So I think the feeling of being in a space where people are very collaboratively minded is
mhm.
almost the biggest thing that most people got out of it, I think, because often I think people feel weird. I don't really want to do that broadcasting on social media side of
Mhm.
things. I would so much rather just talk to people one to one. And so I think bringing together a room full of people who would all rather do that was a
Yeah.
heartening experience for those individuals, because it isn't anymore the mainstream way of doing business, and so I
Mhm.
think people were just grateful to find one another. Um,
Yeah, and I think the value is, like, even if you find just one person that you really align with, that can fill up your calendar. It's just, you're
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really, really nice, to make those connections. How many people were in the cohort I was in? I was trying to remember because we
Uh,
had, several calls, and I'm trying
yeah,
to, like.
I think there were about 22 people
Yeah.
in the cohort, and I'm expecting roughly the same this time. And that to me feels like quite a nice number because you can
I was
kind of get your head round who's there.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say, it felt, like, cozy, but
Yes.
also there was enough variation in how we marketed and what our strengths were, that it was a really great group. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I most love doing is bringing
Mhm.
people who I think might like one another together. So it was a
Yes.
really lovely experience from that point of view, and I'm hoping to have the same experience all over again in a
I'm sure
week's
you
time when
will.
it
Yeah.
starts, because just that seeing those sparks. Maybe I should be
Mhm.
a matchmaker, but seeing people just kind of hit it off with one another and
Mhm.
have new ideas and think about things differently and
Mhm.
be able to be there for one another and to support one another. It is like it's a scary world out there at the moment.
Mhm.
There's tidal waves of change that AI is going to unleash on, our industry, um,
Mhm.
more so than it has done already. And I
Mhm.
think we're going to really need one another. I think
I
that we
I
need that
agree.
connection.
I
So
agree. Yeah. We have a
yeah,
comment. Oh, I love working with AI, but absolutely love the idea of more IRL events. I do
yeah,
too. I use Claude personally almost every day to ask me questions or make sure I'm not missing something as kind of a thought partner. And it really has saved me an incredible amount of time, but it doesn't replace being with humans by any
yeah,
means.
yeah.
If you're joining us live, if you have questions for Sophie or for me, feel free to drop those in the chat. We've got a little bit of time left, and I would love to, you know, hear what's top of mind for you. So even if it's not a question, if there's something that's top of mind for you in terms of marketing or connection or AI, let us know. We'd love to hear, what your challenges are right now, what is exciting for you right now, or what questions you have for us. So, Sophie, I was just thinking about the cohort that I was in, and I've been seeing those people over and over again online. And it's so interesting because I feel like it's when you've bought a car and then you're like, oh, I
Yes,
see my car everywhere now.
yes.
It's just like I see the people everywhere now, and it's really, really cool to see what they're doing. And just to feel like I have more friends in the online space that aren't in my niche. I mean, I know there were other Squarespace web designers there that I kind of knew or knew of ahead of time, but meeting people who do vastly different things online and learning how they're doing things was incredibly helpful because it made me think outside the box for my own business.
And I do think I was thinking that when you were talking about, the YouTube community and the web
Mhm.
designers community. I think that is
Mhm.
incredibly valuable, and we need to spend time with other people who are doing the thing that we're doing.
Mhm.
And we also need to get those fresh perspectives from people who do a completely different kind of thing in a completely different
Yes.
kind of niche, and yet they still also have an online business like we do.
Mhm.
And so I think it doesn't have to be an either or. I think
Mhm.
both and, for sure.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it was really helpful to have those extra perspectives. And I think one of the things as well that I really like about those groups is the way that I run the calls. If somebody has a question, then I will obviously do my best to answer it. But
Mhm.
I really like bringing in everybody else who's on the call, or everybody who
Mhm.
wants to add their perspectives too, because I didn't invent marketing, and there's a ton I don't know, and there's lots of things I've never tried, but
Mhm.
somebody else in the room probably has tried, or has a different
Mhm.
idea, or a different way of thinking about it. And I think just all those different perspectives are so
Mhm.
helpful. And again, not to keep coming back to AI, but I think with AI, you can do what you can to try and get AI to challenge you, but
Mhm.
it's not the same as another human being saying, but I had this life experience that has made me
Mhm.
think X or Y. That's just not a replicable thing. And it's so powerful when somebody says, but have you ever thought of doing X? I did X,
Yes.
and it
Mhm.
transformed everything for me. So yeah, I think that, and I agree with you. I'm noticing the people from the cohort much more online, and some of them I didn't know at all before the group,
Mhm.
because again, being quite meta, the way most of the people found me to come into the group was through my affiliate network, which is, of
Mhm.
course, relationship based marketing. But it meant
Mhm.
that several people in the group, more than half of the people in the group, had never heard of me before, a week before the course started, and I
Uh-huh.
didn't know them. And so it's been really fascinating getting to know those new people, and then them becoming enmeshed with the people that I did already know. And then I
Yeah.
think part of the reason we feel like we are seeing those people everywhere is because they're connected to one another. So we're more likely
Mhm.
to see what they're doing now because they're connected to people that we are already long-standing connections with.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy seeing those kind of patterns, the net spreading out there in the world.
Yeah. I was thinking more about what you were saying about, how AI is not gonna give you those light bulb moments like another human will, and I think that's so true because I feel, we all know, like, AI isn't really thinking, right? It's just mathing. It's like, what is the
Yeah.
most probabilistic response to this input that you've given me? And the beauty of humans is that we're messy and unpredictable,
Yes.
and it's a beautiful thing to learn from another human who has done this crazy thing that worked, because I feel like if we relied just on AI, we would all be doing the same thing and it would all just get
Yes.
lost.
Yes.
Um, we
I
have
think that kind of messy difference is definitely the joy of it, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. We have a question here from Emily. If you're in a small, tight knit industry and find that your offers are very similar to other professionals in your field, how would you approach collabs networking if you share the same audience?
And this is a great question, because I think it's really, you want to share broadly the same audience as the person that you're collaborating with, but
Mhm,
mostly, unless you're very good friends and have made an agreement in advance, you don't want to be doing the same thing for that audience. So for instance, Christy and I are people who can collaborate with one another because we have a very similar
mhm,
audience of small business owners.
mhm,
But Christy does the web design end of things, and I do the copywriting and marketing support end of
mhm,
things. And so we're not treading on one another's toes. So I would say, Emily, that I would be trying to think about who does share the audience but doesn't do what I do. And
mhm,
especially where it's perfect is, and Christy and I could be a good example of this, is where we actually need the other person's skill set for the
mhm,
whole, to best serve our clients. Like my
mhm,
clients who I do copywriting for, I really want them to be working with a great web designer, because otherwise the copywriting work I do with them is almost pointless if it goes on to a
Mhm.
really terrible, terrible, terrible website that is badly designed and clunky and old-fashioned and the navigation is terrible. Then I can have done all the work in the world on the copywriting, but it won't have its full effect. So I think when you can find somebody who shares almost exactly the same audience, but where you're doing slightly different things. So that may mean looking outside of your own industry, and not, for instance, if you're a web designer, necessarily collaborating with other web
Mm.
designers, but maybe collaborating with copywriters or with an SEO expert or with a brand photographer or whatever. So yeah, I think it is hard to collaborate in that public facing way with people who do the exact same thing
Mhm.
as you. It's not impossible, but it's much harder. So yes, I would look outside.
I totally agree that it's much harder, and but I don't think it's impossible because
No.
I actually do this.
Hmm.
So I collaborate very often with other Squarespace designers who do exactly what I do. And I think the reason that works for me in my business is that it's not necessarily for me to get more clients, but it's for me to expand my reach to sell digital products. And the other designers maybe aren't offering those exact same digital products.
Hmm.
So, in that way, it's the same but different. But I do think that what happens during those collaborations, which are very often exactly what Sophie and I are doing today, it could be a YouTube live where we're answering questions or talking about something that's top of mind, that I think that it helps us both understand the industry a little more. And we both come away with new insights, and you're not doing it in a vacuum, which to me is the worst part. So anytime that I can have a buddy for, a YouTube live or something where I'm trying to learn what is a pain point for my audience, if I can have someone else there to chat with about that, even if we offer exactly the same things, we're going to get so much out of it. And it may not be clients at the end, but it might be understanding pain points and other ways that can help shape our businesses. So it's not a dollar sign at the end of it necessarily, but I think it's more of a rising tide lifts all ships kind of moment as well. And it depends on what you're looking to get out of it. So yeah, if you're looking to book out your calendar with clients, then I think absolutely Sophie's advice of like look one step removed from where you are, who's working with those same clients but in a different way, that can be an amazing partnership.
I think the
Um,
other thing to bear in
mhm,
mind is that if you're really clear about your value,
mhm,
and you know that, so for instance, Christy, yes, you and other Squarespace designers, on one level you do the exact same thing
mhm,
for your clients, and
mhm.
on another level your style and a different Squarespace designer's style, as in the
Sure.
visual style, will be
Mhm.
really different.
Vastly different.
And in reality, the same person probably won't pick, they will have a preference as
Mhm,
to which of you they want to work with.
mhm,
So yes, you're competing in one sense, but in another sense, you're not competing, because
mhm.
y- you, unless the person is incredibly similar in visual style and has the same pricing and uses the same processes and can do things in the same time scale and everything, unless they're
And
like
has the
your
same
digital twin.
personality. Like, very often,
Yeah,
when I was like,
yeah,
"Well, why did you
um,
choose to work with me?" They're like, "You seem very calm," and that's what I and orderly and linear, and that's what I needed, as opposed to somebody who's, like,
yeah.
really fun and bright and a cheerleader for you. That is just not my
Mhm.
personality. I'm more even keel. Let's make a checklist. And so people, I think, are drawn to personalities too.
Yeah. And I think,
Mhm,
I mean, one of the things I do in my copywriting end of my business is lots of user research and customer research and buying
mhm,
psychology and so on. And I mean, we buy with our feelings. We make
mhm.
emotional decisions to buy, and then we post rationalize that decision with lots of factual reasons why that person is the right person to choose. But in that sense, if you are on a YouTube live with another Squarespace designer, one of you will be the person that a potential client is just immediately drawn to
Mhm.
because of, as you say, your personality and just it's not even as much as your personality, but just like your vibe, the
Mhm.
way you are in the world kind of thing,
Mhm.
will just be naturally more appealing, even though the person might like both of you.
Mhm.
But just one of you will seem like someone that they can imagine sitting down and saying, look, I'm not quite sure what I want, but it's sort of something like this, like being that bit vulnerable with, etc.
Mhm.
So I do think it's a really good point that we're not as much in direct competition with people as we think we are,
Mhm.
because I don't think it's as simple as that, as long as you're not, because we're not selling widgets, we're selling ourselves in a lot of
Mhm.
ways as
Yeah.
service businesses.
Mhm.
We're selling the way that we do things as well as the thing that we do. Yeah, I think you're right that you don't need to be as careful to differentiate
Mhm.
um, in terms of what you do for people as it seems.
I loved that framing of basically you're not just selling, for me, I'm not selling a website, I'm selling an experience. The
Mhm.
experience of working with me to create your website, and you get a
Yeah.
website in the end. So I like that framing of it a lot.
Mhm. And I think that's what the relational marketing is so good at, because it draws
Mhm.
out that the how somebody is, what their
Mhm.
personality's like, what their point of view is on things, um, just the experiential side of it. And I do think it is much easier for a client to decide to buy from you if they have seen you having a conversation, or if they have attended a workshop that you have run or something like that. They have so
Mhm.
much more information to go on as to whether they're
Yes.
actually going to get what they hope to get out of that
Mhm.
experience. Whereas if, the best Instagram reel in the world can't, there isn't time for it to do that. It's just, it can't give somebody that whole slice of what it's like to be with you in the same way.
Yeah, I was on a call, was it last week, and people were submitting questions, and one of the questions was like, how do I market if I don't want to put myself out there? Like, I'm so tired of social media, so tired.
Mhm.
And, I was thinking about basically the 2 years that I spent on Instagram, this was years ago, creating, 'cause it doesn't look like this anymore, creating this beautifully curated feed, alternating, like, images and text blocks of different colors, and it was so beautiful, and it got me 0 clients. Like, it was
Yeah.
such, I mean, it was really a waste of time doing
Mhm.
that type of marketing, and I wouldn't have known that had I not tried it, but today Instagram is fun for me, and I know that it's not something that's going to drive clients, so I don't spend a ton of time there. And
Yeah.
I think that,
Yeah.
this kind of relational marketing that you're talking about, it's an investment that compounds over time.
Very much so. Very
Mhm.
much so. I think, as you know, I've had long periods in my business where I've been very ill, recovering from an
Mhm.
accident,
Mhm.
and relationship marketing is what saved my business at that point,
Mhm.
because the people who knew me and cared about me made sure that they were sending clients my way, or putting opportunities in my path, and that just makes all the difference.
Mhm.
I think that, as you say, it compounds over time, and you're not, like, an algorithm will punish you if you go 2
Mhm.
days without posting something, but a
Mhm.
person you have a genuine relationship with, it's great to stay on top of that relationship and be in touch regularly. But if you're not in touch for 6 months and you get back in touch with them, they don't, like, "Well, I'm just not speaking to you because, 6 months went by."
Yeah.
It's just not like that.
Mhm. I think this was a really interesting comment. I would not have thought this was the case, but this is a reply to a question that Bailey Works 53 had earlier. So I have a client who's running social ads, Google ads, email, and cold calling is producing the most leads by far. I find that so surprising. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really interesting data point. I wonder if we just miss talking to people.
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
I think it depends a lot on the industry as well, doesn't it, for cold
mhm,
calling?
that's a good
Like, I
point.
wouldn't even have phone numbers for the people that I would want to reach to cold
Yeah.
call them. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And Bailey Work says equipment manufacturer. Yeah, I guess that's a very specific niche, and that makes sense that your equipment would be the solution for someone. Yeah, is yeah, interesting. Wayne had a question for us too. How do you both keep the business moving forward when life happens? Sophie, I think that you've dealt with this quite a bit over the past
I mean, I
couple
guess
of
this is what I
years.
was just
Mhm,
touching on was, for instance, I
mhm,
had a really significant accident a few years ago that left me with a brain injury that really massively affected, still affects, but initially hugely, hugely affected my ability to work.
mhm,
And I do think that the relationship building that I had been doing was probably the single factor that saved the business at that point, because I totally stopped doing everything outward facing for
mhm.
about a year, I would say, because I just had no capacity to. And so I was doing client work, but I was doing nothing else. But
Mhm.
because of those relationships and the referrals, that's what kept the business going. So I don't know about you, Christy, would you say the same?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a part of it too. The other thing that I do that I think helps because, yeah, I've definitely had, unexpected and terrible things happen over the past few years that, you can't work during. For me, it was making sure that I had, I'll put passive in air quotes, passive income streams that
Mhm.
would keep going. So I've worked on affiliate marketing quite a bit over the past 10 years. I have blog posts and videos um, talking about products that I love and use. And so introducing those to other people, that's a steady amount of income each month. And then when I'm not able to work as a service provider because of life getting in the way, I do have some digital products and I can run flash sales or point people toward those or rally my affiliates. Again, network marketing. It's just like, hey, I'm having a sale. Can you help me promote this? And, they get a little win from that as well. So for me, it's not having all of my eggs in one basket. So it's not just doing building websites for clients, but I have other baskets as well that I can lean into as I need to, as a way to just, have something to fall back on when life gets in the way. We had a few years ago, we suffered several losses as a family in a row, and there was a period of about 3 to 4 months that I wasn't able to take on any clients at all, and it was by virtue of having an email list, being present on my blog and YouTube. That's my other channel that works really well for me. But having that more passive income that I could lean into is why I still have a business.
Mhm. And I think also different forms of, I mean, what you're talking about in a way is business model design, but
Hmm.
even just the way you design your offers to be as
Hmm.
spacious as possible. So, for instance,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I use Clarity Flow in my mentorship is I can be
Hmm.
having a really bad day with my health, and I
Hmm.
can still send people voice notes. I can be
Hmm.
lying in bed and send them voice notes. I can go for a long walk because that's the thing that will make my head better. And I can sit down on a bench and answer a whole pile of client queries on a bench looking at a lovely view sitting under a tree, which is a very
Hmm.
different experience from being chained to my desk. And
Yeah.
so I think that designing your business around your life and your capacity, I think is there's lots of different ways to do it to make it work. And I mean,
Hmm.
I think passive income is fantastic, but I also think you can have non-passive income that is still possible to do on a bad day.
Yeah.
So
That's a great
um,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sophie, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. Just, I guess, if anybody's curious about relationship-based marketing and they want to kind of feel their way into it a little bit more, I've
Hmm.
got a quiz on my website, which is all about finding out your hidden strengths in relationship-based marketing. And even people who've done quite a lot of relationship-based marketing have told me they have found it quite helpful and quite insightful. So you might you might want to just dip a toe in the water by taking the quiz if you feel like it. So that's sophiedale.com/quiz to get to it. It's not difficult to find.
I've dropped that in the comments as well.
Thank you.
So if you're joining us live, you can click on it there and check out the quiz. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for showing up and supporting us. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. Again, really excited for your next cohort. And I'm going to drop that link in again. Actually, I'll just pop it up here. This is also in the comments. So Sophie's Expand Your Business Ecosystem is kicking off in is it 1 week?
It's on Monday, less than a week.
Less than a week. Yes. sophiedale.com/expand if you want to explore that a little bit more. I really loved being a part of that cohort last year, and I'm excited to come and speak to your group this time.
I'm so glad you can come and talk, because I think there's a lot we can learn from your experiences.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This will become, if you missed anything, if you joined us late, this is going to go onto YouTube and become a replay that you can revisit at any time at the same link. So thanks so much for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.